ready to go. If you want to go ahead and start.
Ma'am?
I said I'm ready to go.
Okay, good. You ready to start the clock and everything? We're good. Yes, ma'am. Got our first bite ready and everything good.
Yeah, I got the first bite ready.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
Look, where they're heading to right now, and Secretary Blinken, our Secretary of State, said, they're within like about 40 hours of a breakout, having the capacity to build a nuclear weapon. They're enriching uranium between 60 and 80%. You get to 80, they call 90% enrichment is weapons grade, but you can enrich to 80% and you're going to get a bomb. You can do that. And once they get there, my experience has been in the White House under President Trump, is you treat a nuclear power significantly different than you treat a non-nuclear power.
Yeah.
And once they get to that level, there's going to be huge destabilization in the Middle East. The Saudis are going to want to have one. The Emiratis are going to have one. The whole region is going to be in a real state of turmoil and a real state of danger, not just for the region, but for the world as well.
For the world as well. Lieutenant General retired Keith Kellogg on Fox News talking about Iran maybe within 48 hours of a nuclear weapon. 48 hours? We're going to be joined later in this hour by Fred Fleitz, an expert on Iran and its nuclear capabilities and mission. I think we'll want the latest update from him, not only on that, but as he has stated in an article just published, Biden-Harris regime has pushed us closer to World War III. Fred Fleitz coming up shortly. First of all, welcome aboard Larry Connors USA, hour number 1 for October 4, 2023. Reminding you, when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch by going to News Talk STL Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Or you can go to Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. If you miss anything, everything gets posted as a podcast after we air. And there you find it at LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook, News Talk STL podcast, or any other podcast outlet. We're everywhere. And we appreciate you. Wish you would do one thing for me when you do watch at a later point or even now. Push like, and then also add some comments if you want, but more importantly, push share. We're in a war right now, right up to November. Every one of us is a foot soldier. We all have to do our duty. We're down in the mud. We're grunts. You're going to have to march forward. Do not stall out. Do not stop short of the target. And I remind you of 2 questions. You do not have to agree with me on everything. That's fine. But are you a patriot? Are you a patriot? And number 2, do you love this country? I mean, do you love it? Well, then we have a lot in common. Well, we have averted a dock strike. There's been a decision reached apparently with a lot of White House involvement, not necessarily Biden and Harris, but they're going to take some claim. Supposedly Pete Buttigieg, judge, whatever he wants to call himself, was part of the discussions, but that's kind of clouded to some extent. But obviously there were connections going back and forth between the White House, the longshoremen, and the shipping container companies. And we were facing a strike by the longshoremen that was going to shut down ports on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. Now, here comes this news.
From now until January 15th, ports from Maine to Texas, including the Port of New York and New Jersey that's right here behind me, are going to be back up and running as the first East and Gulf Coast port strike in just about 50 years. That's come to the end on a tentative agreement, again, until January the 15th. The ILA Union and Port Operators, USMX, they've agreed on wages with a 61.5% increase over a 6-year contract. We're hearing from President Biden. He issued a statement on this tentative deal. He said in part, I want to thank the union workers, the carriers, and and the port operators for acting patriotically to reopen our ports and ensure the availability of critical supplies for Hurricane Helene recovery and rebuilding. The president mentioned a number of times that having a strike at the ports and the hurricane at the same time was very bad for the economy. It put a strain on the supply chain. He goes on to say it is critical to building a stronger economy, talking about this tentative deal. The president also repeatedly said he would not invoke the Taft-Hartley Act to get the union and the port operators back to the negotiating table and keep the ports open. However, we now know from sources that are very familiar with this tentative agreement that the White House played actually a key role in getting this agreement done and getting these two parties back to the table. So
well, I don't know if they played a key role, but they're going to take credit for it, and they may have. That reporter for NBC went on to list several ranking officials inside the Biden administration. They were on calls throughout the night to both the shipping container companies and the longshoremen. And this is a tentative deal, but understand the pressure that was on. You heard Biden say, I will not invoke, according to the reporter, the Taft-Hartley Act. That is the biggest stick the president has against labor. If they want to get in line and stay on the job till something can be hammered out, he can hit them with Taft-Hartley Act. Basically, you must have a 90-day cooling off period. No strike until then. So they didn't want that to be used because Biden doesn't want to appear to be anti-labor. They were looking for anything. Help us out here. Now, the unions were going to strike on a 70% wage increase over the next 6 years. The money is a big deal, and many of these longshoremen are already making north of $70,000 a year. I mean, $70 an hour, and then be well north of that by the time they have their full year. And the union boss, $800,000 a year, plus another $120,000 a year from his own union, his own local. Money is part of it. Automation is the next thing. That's still to be worked out. So we have an agreement until January 15. Now, it's very interesting, and you should keep in mind the longshoremen stage this knowing we're days from an election. They know how to play the ball game. In fact, Harold Daggett, the longshore spokesman, had already made it clear that if we hit the streets, you will pay.
When my men hit the streets, from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are. Now I have the president screaming at me, I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days.
But, of course, with that attitude, Biden did not want to use the Taft-Hartley. They wanted to find a way around it. So what we have now is all of this is put to the side till January 15, get it past the election day. And then they'll kind of try to resume. I already know the value of longshoremen. I appreciate what they do. And there were also reports of truckers that then, of course, when they arrive on these cargo ships, the containers are loaded onto trucks and they make the final destination, maybe to a shipping facility and then smaller trucks. But some truckers were reporting tires were being slashed. Don't know for sure how many, where. That's just a couple of stories. And, of course, some goods do come by plane. But, yes, container ships are major for supplying the country. And there's some things we do need and some things we do in trade relationships. So I don't underestimate or undervalue the longshoremen. But I will ask you, could you use a because they end up settling at 63% raise for right now over this 6-year contract. Could you use a 10% up to 60% raise over the next 6 years wherever you're working? I'll bet you could. Well, the American economy, according to the Labor Department, just last month added nearly 2 times what they're expecting when it came to jobs. 254,000 jobs added in September. That is what they're reporting today. But do you remember the last time the labor report came out and they named all these jobs, and then they had to come back a few weeks later in a minute and say, we overstated that by several 100,000 jobs? I'm asking, riddle me this, going into this election cycle in the closing weeks here, do you suppose the numbers could have been padded this time and then they'll correct them later? Do you suppose that many of these are government jobs? It's worth asking. Ohio Congressman Mike Rule, when it comes to the issue of are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?
Well, it's like deja vu for me. Back in 2016, I was on the Rush Limbaugh show. I was on the meat counter at Christmas, and I had like 6 of the biggest UAW workers you could imagine with UAW sweatshirts on, but they had MAGA hats on. And I think even now it's a little bit more on steroids, because the question that J.D. Vance brought up the other day in the debate also holds true. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? It's a simple question. It's a question that we're going to win on, because all Americans are worse off today under the Harris administration than we were 4 years ago.
Except my guest John LeBoutier said the other day he's not. Well, good. I'm glad for anybody who's not. I'm glad if you're doing well. But not everybody is. Now back to the Middle East. The Israeli ground war continuing in southern Lebanon. Overnight, Israel firing more missiles into Beirut, still going after all the Hezbollah command.
They have 3 things they're doing. One is they're dismantling systematically their leadership, and we've seen the evidence of that clearly for the last 3 weeks. And here is the so-called successor, hasn't been announced yet, Hassan Sufeddin. As you said, he's a cousin in Nasrallah. He is a founder of Hezbollah. He goes all the way back to 1982. His son is married to Qasem Soleimani's daughter. He has been embedded in this for years and is very close to Iran and the supreme leader. They're going to keep doing this. They've taken out their senior leaders. They've taken down operational leaders like the rocket and missile commander, and they've killed a number of their tactical leaders, because the second mission they're going after in Lebanon is the rocket and missile force. We can only speculate, but about a week and a half ago, I was told by Israelis they had taken down about 30% of the rocket and missile force. I suspect they're probably close to 50% by now, and clearly that is really what they're after, because that's the weapon that can hurt them.
Yeah, they definitely need to take those down. Again, that's retired General Jack King, also a Fox analyst. And then when it comes to the ground war, he had some additional notes for us.
They're attacking on 2 axes. What they're trying to do is eliminate the threat at the border, the rocket and missile threat at the border, and the potential for an invasion like Hamas did on October the 7th. They've got paratroopers, commandos, and armor forces involved in that. They're working on 2 axes. They've committed a division to it. They've got 2 other divisions in standby, which will likely get committed. It'll take a number of weeks for them to accomplish this mission.
Number of weeks, so we're a long ways from seeing the end of that ground war, and the IDF is taking casualties. The last report, at least a dozen dead, as they try to create that buffer zone. And General Jack King says, of course, the main target, the main concern is not the proxies of Hezbollah, Hamas, or the Houthi rebels. General King says the main concern is and will remain Iran.
So our audience understands. I believe, and so does the Israelis who I talk to, they certainly believe that Iran is vulnerable. And why is that? and they're somewhat back on their heels. Well, there are two major proxies where they make all their investment are being systematically dismantled. The military effectiveness of Hamas is dramatically reduced, and you can see what's happening in Hezbollah, and we just talked about it. That is a big deal. And what Netanyahu is going for here, he's not going for stop the fighting. He's going for the win. And that, I think, is what he should be pursuing.
Yeah, and yet we have this administration telling him, just take the hits, don't do anything. Just stand there, let them punch you, let them fire missiles at you. Don't do anything. Israel should handle the war the way it sees it needs to handle it. They do not need Joe Biden mumbling around and trying to tell them what to do or what not to do. And I want to share some thoughts with you from Michael Rubin. He is with the American Enterprise Institute, talking about the missiles that had been fired into Israel. Now, keep in mind, 200 missiles sent direct from Iran into Israel the other day. There's a plus minus to this story. Michael Rubin points out you need to be aware of the minus danger.
Before we celebrate the fact that so many of these missiles were shot down or missed their target, remember, as in last April when Iran sent its previous barrage, if only 7 or 8 missiles get through, but those 7 or 8 have chemical, biological, or radiological warheads, then we're talking a whole different ballgame. I'm afraid now that this has happened twice, that the Israelis are going to be tempted to respond and respond hard. I think we're now in the last days of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Well, I'd like to think we're in the last days of the Republic of Iran, but I'm not so sure. The Iran Supreme Commander had said in Tehran today that the Iranian missile attack on Israel was, quote, the least punishment, adding that we will attack again if necessary. And Israel is reporting that, yes, there have been some damage areas. They're still not seeing specific numbers on any deaths or anything at this point. We do know because of the ground war, the hospital in South Lebanon is out of commission for right now. But again, the Prime Minister of Israel made it clear, our battle, our war is not with you, Lebanon, the Lebanese. It's with Hezbollah, who would take it over your country, hiding in the midst of your civilian population. So as we come after them, unfortunately, your civilians will become casualties. But you should blame the Hezbollah because they hide, like cowards they are, under baby beds and in hospitals. In our next hour, with the recent attempts to kill Donald Trump, my guest, James DiEugenio. He's a leading theorist, or some would say conspiratist, on JFK assassination. He's got some thoughts referencing the recent attempts on Donald Trump and additional points he might add. And later in this hour, how the Biden administration continues to fail Americans suffering from Hurricane Helene. But up next, 25-year veteran of CIA and House Intel, Fred Fleitz, on how Biden-Harris is bringing us closer to World War III. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
My sponsor, Wellington Environmental, has helped thousands deal with hazardous materials. Hospitals, offices, schools, even homes. Here's something new. Wellington now offers dustless blasting. This is just like sandblasting, but without all the dust and emissions. Wellington uses everything from ground glass, walnuts, corn, even dry ice pellets. One university had Wellington remove their parking lot striping because dustless blasting is fast and it does not damage the concrete. So as a business or homeowner, I'm sure you could use this process. Industrial tanks, swimming pools, graffiti on buildings. And in fact, Wellington is blasting a Texaco station that will be revised as an historic building. Check the website for details and photos. WellingtonSTL.com. WellingtonSTL.com. You know, when you're car shopping, it should be fun, not a chore. That's why when you visit Ackerman Toyota on Hampton, just south of 44, you'll enjoy the largest customer lounge to make you feel at home. You can always check AckermanToyota.com, but come enjoy the Ackerman hospitality. We'll be waiting to help you get what you want, and while you're relaxing. Ackerman Toyota, number 1 in 2023. Ackerman Toyota, for life. John Beal knows it right after a hailstorm. New roofing companies start popping up everywhere. But the Small Business Administration reports 96% of them go out of business within the first 5 years. So how good is that warranty? John Beal started in the roofing business, helping his granddad and his dad. Always offering the best roof, best price, best guarantee. John Beal Roofing, not some fly-by-the-night operation. Call my friend John, 1-800-NEW-ROOF, 1-800-NEW-ROOF.
This is News Talk STL.
Got me waking, boss man, waking around the clock. I want a little rain or water, that you won't let Jimmy start, big boss. Can't you hear me when I call?
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. My guest we've had on numerous times before, 25 years, CIA analyst, and also House Intel Committee member, Intel for Them, National Security Council, now Vice Chair, America First Policy Institute for American Security. Fred Fleitz, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Larry, good to be here.
Well, I'm looking at an article you just put out, and it's titled The Biden-Harris Doctrine has brought the world closer to World War III. That is a very powerful statement, sir.
You know, it is a statement, and I think that it's appropriate. And I wrote it in response to attempts by Biden officials to rewrite history. There's a new article in the journal Foreign Affairs. That's a left-wing journal, Larry. You don't want to read it.
I know about it. Go ahead.
I forced myself to read the nonsense in it,
right,
in which Secretary of State Blinken, the same day Iran bombed Israel, Blinken ran an article saying that American influence has never been better, and we have Iran in a box.
Yeah.
Now, a year earlier, National Security Advisor Sullivan also wrote an article in Foreign Affairs in which he said the Middle East has never been quieter. Mm-hmm. And a few days later, Hamas launched its terrorist attack against Israel, killed 1,200 people. We need to make the point that the world is not okay right now.
Are they just
we're
speaking?
Facing the possibility of a nuclear war.
Oh, and that is the key point. So are they just speaking, just blowing puff and smoke, or do they actually believe it, and then it goes back in their face?
You know, I've wondered about that, whether they believe their own lies and distortions, or maybe they're oblivious to what's going on. But, you know, as the war in Ukraine expands, Putin is saying more and more he may use nuclear weapons. And we're facing the possibility of an all-out war between Israel and Iran. This is dangerous stuff. So when Trump says we're on the brink of World War III and a nuclear war, he's not exaggerating.
Well, to that extent, you also point out his foreign policy when he made that bizarre statement in January 2021, the U.S. might tolerate a minor incursion of Ukraine. That's an open door for Russia.
And, you know, I try to break down whatever it is we can say the Biden doctrine is. And one major aspect of it is simply incredible incompetence. And that statement was just so damaging to our position on the war in Ukraine. I mean, it was made worse because Putin was emboldened to invade because of the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the obvious signs that Biden is suffering mental decline. He has a weak foreign policy that prioritizes climate change.
Yeah.
And then Biden said that, and a few weeks later, Russia invaded.
Yeah, I don't see anything that says, other than him saying, if you're going to take advantage of the Mideast, don't. I mean, good God, that's supposed to put a stop to Russia, China, Iran, Iraq, anyone else who decide not Iraq but North Korea and the terrorist cells. If you just tell them don't, pretty please, maybe?
You know, when Biden says don't, It sounds like the expression "dolt" by Homer Simpson. It does. It really does.
You're right. You're right.
And it's so pointless. Every time he says that, our enemies are laughing at us. It's like our president is Homer Simpson making this ridiculous directive. Don't. What does "don't" mean? No one's paid attention to him.
Well, Kamala knew, because when she's asked what do you say, well, what the president said, don't. Oh, don't. I'm sorry, you got me now doing it.
Well,
listen, before you joined us, I ran a clip of Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg stating that right now we can assume that Iran might be within 48 hours of a nuclear weapon. Do you agree?
I don't. And we've talked about this on the show before. I think Iran is probably about a week away from enriching enough uranium in a gaseous form to fuel a nuclear weapon. But it would take another 9 months to a year to make that gas into bomb fuel for a prototype weapon. So I know where General Kellogg is going, but I don't believe Iran is that close. It's still too close, but it's not days to weeks away from having a weapon it could detonate.
Now, we still have our bunker-busting bombs that could go deep into the earth before they explode. Can we get to that facility that way, or do we possibly have some folks inside that have already carried out various explosions that cause havoc with inside their nuclear capability plans of what they're working on?
First of all, Biden shouldn't be telling the Israelis what they can bomb. If Israel thinks it has to bomb a nuclear facility, that's Israel's decision. And if Biden thinks that, he shouldn't be saying it publicly. It will be difficult to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons when they have them, because they're going to be buried deep underground. There are facilities which are enriching uranium to make uranium fuel for a weapon. They're partially underground, and they could be destroyed by multiple bunker buster attacks. But there's other facilities that Israel could attack now that are not that well defended that would make a real difference. There is the Isfahan Nuclear Research Facility. It's like an academic campus. It has all the brain power of Iran's nuclear program, and Israel could simply destroy it. And in fact, when Israel attacked Iran a few months ago with targeted missiles, it hit radar installations very near this facility.
All right, so obviously that's on the scope as well. I want to share with you a piece in the National Review by Andy McCarthy pointing out this is very much along the line what you and I discussed in the past about the deal that Obama put in place. The article title is "The Missiles Being Fired at Israel Got a Boost from the Obama-Biden-Iran Nuclear Deal While Congressional Republicans Failed to Block It."
I think that's right. The 2015 nuclear deal with Iran had sanctions on Iran's conventional weapons and missile program. They were extremely weak. And the Republicans didn't block the deal in 2015, but they really couldn't because they didn't have enough votes in Congress. I think there were opportunities when Republicans could have weighed in harder, but Obama and the Senate Democrats, they were almost in unison. There were some outliers, but they were almost in unison backing this terrible deal. And Iran has used that agreement to ramp up its nuclear missile program ever since.
Well, part of that joint, what was it, JCPOA, is that right? Am I describing it correctly? Did that not also include we would lift the restrictions and trade embargo around Iran? Was that part of that too, right?
That's right. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is the 2015 nuclear deal approved in July of 2015, meant that almost all sanctions on Iran were lifted, and Iran agreed to very weak restrictions on its nuclear program.
And then Biden comes in, and what sanctions do we have on them now?
Well, Trump put over 1,000 sanctions on Iran, which I think is really impressive.
Yeah.
And Biden weakened a lot of them. He kept a good number in place. But the biggest problem is he hasn't enforced oil sanctions. That's allowed Iran to become $100 billion richer today than it was when Trump left office.
And that fuels their proxy wars, clearly.
Yeah, it was. I mean, this money that Iran got it used for its missile program, its nuclear program. It helped fund Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels. Trump is right. Iran was almost broke because of the sanctions he put, and now Iran is much richer.
Well, again, this article that you wrote, the Biden-Harris doctrines brought the world closer to World War III. When I saw that headline with your name below it, I thought that we need to sit up and pay attention, and I thank you for sounding the alarm, if anyone will listen. Do you think they will?
I hope they will, but this article ran in American Greatness today, if your listeners want to take a look at it. But look, we have to get the message out to the American people on how dangerous the world is right now and why. And why I think it's crucial we get Trump back in the White House to restore American and global security.
I agree fully. Now, in the meantime, as we watch the ground war go after southern Lebanon, Israel trying to clear some buffer zone, and going after the Hezbollah leader, Nasrallah, getting him, going after all the other leaders of Hamas, and now, of course, we've got the Ayatollah, he's probably deep in one of those ground bunkers. He makes a statement, pops up, and disappears, pop up, disappear. He knows he's on that target list. Should we make, or Israel, do you expect them, I should say, to go directly after him?
I think the precedent of killing a head of state is a very dangerous one. I think killing Nasrallah, head of a terrorist group, Hezbollah, was different. Israel's going to have to think very hard whether it wants to take a step like that to take out Supreme Leader Khamenei, who is the head of the Iranian government. I think before it does that, it may take out the Revolutionary Guard Corps headquarters, factories that make missiles, factories that make other types of weapons. But killing the head of state, it's a very serious matter. I don't know that Israel will do that.
Well, Fred, I appreciate that admonition and warning at the same time. Fred Fleitz, as always, I appreciate your time.
Good to be here. Thanks.
You bet. And, folks, you can watch Fred Fleitz on a constant basis. He's all over the major networks, even the state-controlled media, because he knows what he's speaking of. And, again, the piece that he just published, I will put on our links today where you can find the article on our social media. So be watching for that as well. And we'll put it up on Twitter and everything else where you can contact and see Fred, follow him closely. All right, back to the issue we have in this country, and that is trying to deal with the effects of Hurricane Helene, and where we, the nation, are failing.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've got a phone number for you and a website where you can take a free, quick survey to learn how to use artificial intelligence, AI, to put your company on a fast track to the future. Here's the number. It's a 636 area code, 636-689-0545, 689-0545. This is PRI Global. And recently, the St. Louis Business Journal named PRI Global as a leading IT consulting company. 25 years working with hundreds of companies, several Fortune 500, locally and around the world. PRI Global has its own AI lab to develop what's best for your company. Take the free survey and be on your way to the future. 636-689-0545, 689-0545, or go direct PRIGlobal.ai, PRIGlobal.ai. If you like premium cigars and spirits, take my advice. Check out Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. The Lit Cigar owners just got back from a major convention in Vegas, and now every day, Lit is getting shipments of special cigars that will certainly amaze you. Check the Lit Cigar Facebook, staying on top of special events. Also, Lit can host a private event for you, your friends, your business. LitSTL.com. LitSTL.com. Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. This hour of Larry Connors USA brought to you by my friends at Renewal by Anderson. And listen to this. Renewal is having a killer of a sale. Buy any window or door. Get a second one, 50% off, 0 interest, no payments for 18 months. Renewal has the most 5-star reviews of any full-service window company. Simply dial pound 250, pound 250, and say the key word, windows.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
FEMA is tremendously prepared. This is what we do. This is what they do. And the key here, Rebecca, is also to make sure that the communities who are potentially impacted are prepared as well. And it's not just hurricanes and wildfires, also extreme heat, which certainly some parts of the United States are already experiencing.
Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. Listen.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion from a FEMA program on services for migrants.
That is a key point. They robbed Peter to pay Paul, you might say, but they really robbed you, the American taxpayer, of money to help you in the event of a disaster, to help illegals resettle, give them money, give them $4,000 debit cards, and say, when you run that out, you will give you another card. No big deal. Is this a great country or what? Of course it is. But it's becoming less so with that kind of handout and giveaway. That is why you heard 2 different cuts from Mayorkas. Just 3 months ago, he said, we got plenty of things. We got plenty of money. We're ready to go. And keep in mind, we're not just dealing with hurricanes and earthquakes and so forth. We have fires. We have droughts. We do it all. That's what we do as a Federal Emergency Management Association. And now he says, we don't have enough money. And the reason they don't have enough money is exactly as you heard stated. $1 billion taken out of the FEMA account, spread across the nation into blue cities and blue states, but not even for their benefit, but to dump illegals in their midst, but give them credit cards and so forth so they can go buy things that might help some of the small business or larger businesses. But the bottom line is it does not help Americans. We have stressed to you on this program, we are a nation of immigrants, and proudly so, but legal immigration. And I've also made it clear when it comes to, quote, mass deportation of those who've come in, I'm not sure how that can be accomplished and how best to do it. I have some issues there. I don't simply buy into Trump's statement we will have mass deportation. I need particulars, specifics, and they will have to be in place to actually do it. We're not going to round people up, put them in a cattle car, and ship them to the South again. We're not going to do that. I would not stand for that. But I will say, of the 450,000, even ICE admitted the other day, 450,000 on the loose in our country are either guilty or charged with murder, rape, and other heinous crimes. And we know 16,000 of them have already been convicted of murder or rape. A total of 30-plus thousand, basically. They're roaming anywhere and everywhere. Do you want to open up your house for some illegals to help out? Really? Of course you don't. Does any liberal progressive, for any of them that say we want more illegals come in, are you willing to open your house? You know the answer. They're not going to do it. They want you to suffer. It's all about, as I said in our commentary running today, the new Harris slogan should be, suffer, suffer, we want you to suffer. Brought to you by Harris Walls, Harris Biden Walls, whatever. Speaking of Biden, he got asked about the help for the storm in North Carolina, and the man is totally clueless, and the answer is just the same.
What do the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President? Sorry? What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the storm zone. I don't know what storm you're talking about. They're getting everything they need. They're very happy across the board. No. So we just got to I'm going to have to go back to the Congress and get some more money for it.
No, they're not all happy. And I will stress to you again, simply the president flying over a storm zone damage area doesn't change anything. It's mostly a photo op. He can do it all while in the White House, but it is important to get out with the people. Same for a governor in a disaster zone for his state. But it's like Obama, I'm doing the same thing as Biden now. Biden just gets off this helicopter tour of the storm zone, and he doesn't know. You're asking me about the storm zone? Oh, the storm zone. Yeah, everybody's happy. They're all getting everything. No, not necessarily. In fact, I want you to hear from one North Carolina victim being very clear.
It's too late. I mean, they took too long. It took them 5 days to get here. And I mean, it took 5 days for Biden to come here, and he didn't think we were worth coming down to see us himself. He had to fly over on his way to Raleigh. It's disgraceful. I mean, they keep saying we the people. No, there is no we the people. It's them versus us. So they're not for us. It's all about them. They tell us what we need instead of listening to us.
Yep, he's right. But again, I will caution one thing when he says he just flew over us to get to Raleigh. Even if he had landed, and I will want you to keep this in mind. If the president lands in a disaster zone, well, then you've got to pull first responders and other people and equipment from doing what they should be doing to go help protect the president, if the Secret Service is properly organized. Trump would probably parachute in if he were still president, say, you're on your own, see if you can find your way out. I saw one story today that a Navy vet swept away from his house, his family watching, swept away in the waters. He grabbed hold of a tree, held on for 18 hours before they could get to him and rescue him. So that's not all good. They're not all happy, and much of the relief, especially for North Carolina, has been coming too late. Governor DeSantis, even though they've been hard hit by Helene up and down the Gulf Coast line, and I've seen some of the damage, and there's some horrific damage down along there, and they had damage there. They had it in Georgia, and they had it into the South Carolina, and North Carolina, especially hard hit. They'd already had heavy rainstorms in the area. Now Helene, tropical depression at that point, or storm withering out, dropping more rain, and every valley turns into a floodgate for all the water to go crashing down on everyone. And Governor DeSantis said, we have enough to take care of our people. We have plans in place. We're ready to go. Take your federal resources that you have and send it to North Carolina to help those people. Do you hear that anywhere on the leftist mainstream media, state-controlled media? I would guarantee you, if it were Governor Shapiro and they had a disaster going on in his state of Pennsylvania, he'd say, look, take it from us and send it to North Carolina. Oh, they'd be praising and lauding. What a great man. What an outstanding achievement. But for DeSantis, no, he's one of those morally repugnant people. We're not even going to give him that grace. Well, he does have in Florida a congresswoman, Anna Paulina Luna, and she says she's not holding back when it comes to what the Biden administration is failing to do.
North Carolina is underwater, 1,000 people missing. While Pinellas County, we had 11 deaths, and we have a majority of our residents that aren't going to be able to come back to their homes because they're completely destroyed. You have Mayorkas, the Biden-Harris administration, and radical leftists in Washington, mostly in the Democrat Party, gave illegals $1.1 billion in housing assistance. People that never paid into the system. Mind you, they wouldn't have been here in the first place if they weren't campaigning on open borders, but that's a separate video. You should be pissed. And if you think as a legislator, I'm not pissed, and I don't see the games that happen in Washington hoping that you're not paying attention, because that's how it goes up there, is they hope the American people are too busy working to pay attention to the crap that they're doing. I'm telling you, you need to get out and vote, because this is not going to stop. It's just going to continue with the inflation, with the border security issues, and now we have Americans that are literally dying, not being able to get assistance, and the administration says, it's okay, we'll give you $750. Meanwhile, they said our tax dollars overseas to fund countries that don't need it, and they give it to illegal immigrants.
And a $750 to someone that's had their entire home wiped out and maybe lost family members? And yet, if you're in illegal and you need help, they're giving you $4,000 worth of a debit card. And they tell you, if you use it all up, we'll give you another one. But we'll give you a $4,000 debit card every month if you need it. Does that even begin to make sense? Not even the far, far left liberal could admit it, but they will claim it does. This is disaster on top of disaster. Helene, followed by Biden-Harris. And keep in mind what Kamala was doing when Helene was devastating and leaving North Carolina in its mess. That story when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
I'm honored to tell you that the Cafe Napoli family is growing. That means you're going to have more locations to enjoy the Napoli experience. The Napoli heritage of fine dining continues with Napoli Kirkwood. So you have Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2, Town and Country, Napoli 3, St. Charles, right next door, Napoli C, and don't forget Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the district, Chesterfield Valley. Plus soon, Napoli Kirkwood.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Last night, well into the devastation, the loss of life, men, women, children, pets, the entire devastation and destruction of communities, Kamala Harris attended an LA fundraiser. This tweet goes out from Matt Visor. Kamala Harris is at an LA fundraiser with Stevie Wonder, Keegan-Michael Key, Sterling Brown, Demi Lovato, Jessica Alba, Lily Tomlin, Alanis Morissette, and Holly Bailey performing. Menu: duck egg roll, goat cheese honey blueberry ball, beef Wellington, lobster roll, and crab cakes. This was September 29th at 7:48 p.m. The devastation was ongoing. How dare she?
How dare she? That's Megyn Kelly. Now, I ran that clip the other day, but I thought it needs to be shouted again from the rooftop, because North Carolina, they were dealing with death, destruction all around them. At the very moment before she even headed to L.A., it was happening. And then she's out there enjoying all of this. I hope she got her fill of the stuffed goat cheese or whatever the hell it was. And then when she does recognize, I need to make an appearance there, and I'll do it not in Tennessee, because that might not be a blue state. Not going to go to North Carolina. That's not going to be very good for a blue state. I'll go to Georgia, which is a swing state, which we need, and she shows up in Georgia.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met, such as food, baby formula, and the like. And you can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected.
Yeah, you can apply now for more. We'll give you $750. You can apply more. That was in Georgia. They had some devastation in Georgia. I'm not dismissing what they suffered either. But she did not go the other states because of the very reasons I said. Not going to get a lot of votes for us there anyway, but we need Georgia. And they need Pennsylvania, as does Trump. And there's some changes on that event For instance, listen to this. You don't know how big this is going to get. Obama now says he will join Kamala in Pennsylvania. He's going to go into Pennsylvania, try to shore her support up in Pennsylvania. That's how critical it is. And listen to this other part. You thought it was over with that? Oh, no. No, I got more for you. Donald Trump is returning to Pennsylvania. October 5. Musk is going to be with him. You know where they're going? They're going to hold a rally at the same Butler County facility where the assassination attempt took place. Right now, they're planning on doing exactly where the July 13 shooting took place. They're going to be speaking at October 5 at the Butler Farm Show Farm Grounds in Butler County. Not exactly the same place, but he is returning to Butler, Pennsylvania. And Musk will be beside him. Now, you know the Secret Service is going to try to declare, we can't protect you. You need to hold it indoors. We can't have all these people here. And I told you, be aware that the Secret Service will now use that we can't protect you. We don't have enough manpower, as opposed to we don't have proper leadership. So you need to hold everything inside so all these thousands cannot be there and be seen and make it look like you have real momentum. So Obama is joining Harris in Pennsylvania. Musk is joining Trump in Butler County, Pennsylvania. Good. In our next hour, does a driver's license prove you are a U.S. citizen and you can vote in our presidential election? I'd say no. What say you? Also coming up, James DiEugenio on the JFK assassination in light of these attempts trying to kill Donald Trump. That's all coming up in our next hour. You don't want to miss it. Make sure your family and friends are listening. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Beal knows that new roofing companies can look big and trustworthy on the internet, but the fact is 96% of new roofing companies go out of business within the first 5 years. John Beal has a reputation for excellence, reliability, plus lowest cost, best roof, best guarantee. Those here today, gone tomorrow roofers, they can't match John Beal. For home or business, trust my friend John. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. If you haven't been to Lit Cigar Lounge in the district at Chesterfield, you're missing a great experience. Premium cigars, drinks, spacious seating, TVs in every direction. This and more explain why Lit was voted Best Cigar Lounge 2 years in a row. Now you can be at Lit and order Napoli Brothers pizza and pasta delivered to you. In fact, Napoli's just a few doors down. A coal-fired oven giving a unique taste. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, now open in the Chesterfield district. Looking for a new or premium pre-owned car? Let's start at Ackerman Toyota. Now, you can check what's available and coming at AckermanToyota.com, but I truly encourage you to visit Ackerman just south of 44 on Hampton. Ackerman has the largest customer lounge. You can relax, take your time. So you'll start at Ackerman, and you'll end up at Ackerman. And thank you for making Ackerman Toyota number one in 2023. Ackerman Toyota. Ackerman Toyota for life. Here's some expert advice from McGuire Moving and Storage. If you have a home or business move coming up, you need to book now. Most moving companies are booked 6 to 8 weeks out. So call McGuire now, get an on-site estimate, set a date. McGuire has 85 years of experience and just won the Spire Quality Award. I can personally testify McGuire goes above and beyond to help the clients. McGuire Moving and Storage, McGuireMoving.com. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, now open in the district of Chesterfield Valley. Napoli has the only coal-fired pizza oven. That means an incredible taste you cannot get anywhere else. So enjoy a unique pizza at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the district. And then walk a few doors down and enjoy premium cigars and drinks at Lit Cigar Lounge. There's a perfect way to end the evening. Napoli Pizza followed by Lit Cigar Lounge. A winning combination. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. I can tell you how to get a free quick quiz to see how artificial intelligence can boost your company's potential. You go to PRIglobal.ai, PRIglobal.ai. St. Louis Business Magazine listing PRI as one of the leading IT companies, and PRI has its own AI lab to develop what your business needs. PRIglobal.ai, PRIglobal.ai.
This is News Talk STL.
Change, 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 change.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
FEMA is tremendously prepared. This is what we do. This is what they do. And the key here, Rebecca, is also to make sure that the communities who are potentially impacted are prepared as well. And it's not just hurricanes and wildfires, also extreme heat, which certainly some parts of the United States are already experiencing.
Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene.
Page, but this page hasn't loaded in and it doesn't play anything, so I don't know what happened there. I don't know if somebody messed up, but I'm going to start again.
Not here.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
FEMA is tremendously prepared. This is what we do. This is what they do. And the key here, Rebecca, is also to make sure that the communities who are potentially impacted are prepared as well. And it's not just hurricanes and wildfires, also extreme heat, which certainly some parts of the United States are already experiencing.
Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. Listen.
We are meeting the immediate needs, with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion from a FEMA program on services for migrants.
And that is the key. You had the money. 3 months ago, Mayorkas was saying, we got all the money. We got it all. And Congress approved even more money than we got money. We're flush with cash. So instead of holding it where it should be in safekeeping for emergencies, for Americans, they started robbing it in the dead of night and taking money out of that FEMA cash fund and turned it into their own personal purse and slush fund and giving it to illegals entering our country. They even stated on their website, their page states, but they don't do it as quite as harshly as I just said. They said money was being used to help settle immigrants and help with their needs. It's the same damn thing. You stole from the American people, from the Federal Emergency Fund, to give to illegals, not to settle immigrants. You're settling illegals at the expense of the American taxpayer. And now at the expense of those caught in the midst of this disaster from Helene. All right, thanks for joining us. This is hour number 2 of Larry Connors USA. We're here for you every Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. And we bring the fire every day. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we're also streaming video. You can watch the fire. I mean, it does get fiery. You can watch the fire by going to News Talk STL Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can go to Larry Connors USA, Rumble, or Facebook. If you miss anything, everything goes up as a podcast later. Audio and video available at News Talk STL. Also, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook. And when you watch or share later or look and listen later, do hit the button to share. Send it to others. We need everyone in the march going into November. Every one of you foot soldiers need to be there and bring others with you. If you become our multiplying factor, we can make sure we win. I don't want anyone to take it for granted we're going to. We need everyone and everyone voting. This is a national broadcast. You can hear us from anywhere. My daughter was the other day in her car, and you know how she was able to listen? She's in Florida. We have great FM radio signals here, but they don't reach to Florida. But she has her phone, her cell phone, and she has our free app on there. She opened it up, playing it through her car Bluetooth. Took a picture of it while it's up there. She was stopped at the time, obviously, not driving, but listening to my interview yesterday with John LaBoutiere, or the other day when we had him on following the debate. So she's listening in Florida. I've got many listening in Texas. I've got many in Michigan. Every time I mention Governor Whitmer, I should have said that, but I did. We've got folks listening all across Europe. Many who have been at Scott Air Force Base and know me anyway, and others in Europe are learning about us from friends and family that have listened. That's why you're important. Now, those in Europe, glad to have you listening, but my message for those here in the States, if you're an American, make sure you're voting and you know which way we want you to vote. And if you're in Europe and you are a U.S. citizen, get your vote in. They're already trying to come up with their drop boxes in the normal suspect places where they rig elections in our nation. We're going to talk a little bit later about election security coming up. But let's go back to what's being done to help the people truly in need right now. That would be primarily in North Carolina. Vast majorities of areas wiped off the face of the map. When you get heavy rain on a desert area, it will find its way into ravines, and suddenly you've got flash flooding. When you're in the mountainous region, you've got flash flooding all around you. And as Helene moved north, dumping tons of water into those areas, casualties. The death count's still going up, and they still don't have a final count because they're still finding bodies. There was one man who was found clinging to a tree for 8 hours before they got to him. But that's one of the miracle stories. Maybe there'll be more. But pray for those still dealing with that. One Florida congresswoman stepping forward, and her governor had already said, DeSantis, that, look, we will take care of our people down here. We've had damage and it's rough, but we have facilities. We know what to do. So send all your FEMA dollars that you say you have and equipment into North Carolina where they desperately need it. They've never dealt with a disaster of this nature. That's a statement from someone who cares about other people and taking money that he could take for his state and say, send it to them. They need it more. Well, one of the Florida congresswomen, a Republican, praises DeSantis for doing that, but then she talks about how the Biden-Harris administration has stolen from the American people and their needs.
North Carolina is underwater, 1,000 people missing. While Pinellas County, we had 11 deaths, and we have a majority of our residents that aren't going to be able to come back to their homes because they're completely destroyed. You have Mayorkas, the Biden-Harris administration, and radical leftists in Washington, mostly in the Democrat Party, gave illegals $1.1 billion in housing assistance. People that never paid into the system. Mind you, they wouldn't have been here in the first place if they weren't campaigning on open borders, but that's a separate video. You should be pissed. And if you think as a legislator, I'm not pissed, and I don't see the games that happen in Washington hoping that you're not paying attention, because that's how it goes up there, is they hope the American people are too busy working to pay attention to the crap that they're doing. I'm telling you, you need to get out and vote, because this is not going to stop. It's just going to continue with the inflation, with the border security issues, and now we have Americans that are literally dying, not being able to get assistance, and the administration says, it's okay, we'll give you $750. Meanwhile, they said our tax dollars overseas to fund countries that don't need it, and they give it to illegal immigrants.
That is Anna Paulina Luna, Florida Congresswoman. And you heard her say the Biden administration thinks, look, if we go and we give you in Nashville, North Carolina, $750, you'll be okay, right? Of course they're not going to be okay. They're doing that at the same time they're giving $4,000 debit cards to illegals and telling them, use up the card. When you do, let us know. We'll get you another card. We had a store clerk on the other day that said an illegal came in, used their debit card to buy something, and I can see the balance left on the card. They bought about $1,000 worth of items, and there's still $3,000 left on that card. And we're giving Americans $750? Kamala Harris has not been to North Carolina. That's not going to be a good state for them, nor South Carolina. They are worried about Georgia, a swing state, so she made a point to go to Georgia and brag about what she is giving to those suffering.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met, such as food, baby formula, and the like. And you can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected.
How do you apply if you're in the middle of North Carolina? You have no cell service. Everything's been wiped out. And there's a story about some private helicopter pilots that were trying to lift people out. One pilot says he took his son, who also has experience as a helicopter pilot, and they were flying water into some areas, and they were sometimes picking people up. There was one area, they saw a family out on a driveway, a man and a wife. They'd land, and he could not put everyone on board because he was worried about the driveway giving way. So he took the woman, took her back to land her 3 miles away, and as he was getting ready to leave, some police officer from Michigan who was on the scene on behalf of FEMA said, you're not allowed to fly in and out of here. He said, I've already coordinated with everybody. We've been doing it for days. Well, I'm not going to let you go again. He said, I left my son on that mountain. I am going back for my son. No, you're not. Well, he did. Good. He got his son, and then he also ended up getting the woman off as well. Got the woman off first, I should have said, and then got the husband off. You got lunatics trying to keep people from getting what help might be available. So the dock workers' strike is over, never really got started, did it? Talk about some political dealing. And, of course, the White House wants to take full credit.
from now until January 15th, ports from Maine to Texas, including the Port of New York and New Jersey that's right here behind me, are going to be back up and running as the first East and Gulf Coast port strike in just about 50 years. That's come to the end on a tentative agreement, again, until January the 15th. The ILA Union and Port Operators, USMX, they've agreed on wages with a 61.5% increase over a 6-year contract. We're hearing from President Biden. He issued a statement on this tentative deal. He said in part, I want to thank the union workers, the carriers, and the port operators for acting patriotically to reopen our ports and ensure the availability of critical supplies for Hurricane Helene recovery and rebuilding. The president mentioned a number of times that having a strike at the ports and the hurricane at the same time was very bad for the economy. It put a strain on the supply chain. He goes on to say it is critical to building a stronger economy, talking about this tentative deal. The president also repeatedly said he would not invoke the Taft-Hartley Act to get the union and the port operators back to the negotiating table and keep the ports open. However, we now know from sources that are very familiar with this tentative agreement that the White House played actually a key role in getting this agreement done and getting these two parties back to the table. So here's what.
Because it's bad politics for it to be underway as we go into the election. So they get a tentative agreement of a 62% wage increase. And then come January, they will go back to the table and deal with it again. And part of it does deal with not just money, but automation. Kevin O'Leary, head of O'Leary Investments, and, of course, on the Shark Tank, he said, this issue about automation, he said the trouble with East Coast ports is that they are very old. They're very inefficient. And you start to compare them against other international ports like Singapore, other Asian ports, we're not holding up much against them. That's bad for productivity. In other words, he's saying they're going to have more automation. You can get all the money you want, but if you're not using automation in the proper way, you're losing. That's why the West Coast wasn't really under that much threat, because it's newer facilities. However, many of them supplied by China. All right, we have an election coming up. Maria Bartiromo had the RNC chair, Michael Whatley, with him, talking about how we are seeing and what we're doing to keep the voter rolls clean.
We know that oftentimes they are issuing driver's licenses to some of these illegals coming into the country after they get processed. Is a driver's license proof of citizenship?
No, it's not, especially when you have states like Arizona and Nevada and others that are giving driver's licenses to illegal aliens under their state law, and then they're automatically registering anybody with a driver's license. These are the types of changes that we're fighting to implement across the country.
In other words, they are giving them a driver's license and then basically saying you are free and eligible to vote in our national election. You are not. Once again, RNC Chairman Whatley as to what they're doing to keep an eye on the ballots that are cast.
Well, you've said many times that one of your main priorities is ensuring that we have a fair election this November. You mentioned Arizona. What's going on there in Arizona? Early voting begins on October 9th. The ballots in Maricopa County. We want to get your take on whether or not you've got confidence there in Arizona, because apparently the Gateway Pundit reported that the GOP chairwoman provided an update to allegations that there's not going to be a fair election there.
Well, there is going to be a fair election, and we're working very, very hard with the Arizona GOP. I actually had dinner with the chairwoman last night, and we're focusing very hard on making sure that we have the right rules of the road in place before the voting starts. We filed numerous lawsuits, and we've been engaged in a lot of discussions with Maricopa and with the state of Arizona. We're going to have observers and lawyers who are going to be in the room whenever a vote is counted, whenever a vote is cast, to make sure that we're going to be on top of this. We want it to be easy to vote and hard to cheat.
You better. I could care less about you saying, I had dinner with them. What the hell does that have to do with anything? Gordon Sondland is a former ambassador for the European Union, and he had said previously that he hated Donald Trump. So he's on with NBC, and they were expecting him to, again, chastise Trump and trash him. That did not happen.
MSNBC invited a Never Trump voter on air to bash Donald Trump, and they were all shocked when instead of doing that, he said this.
No for you after that. Why was it important for you to say no more Trump because of his January 6th conduct, and do you stand by that?
No, I don't stand by it, and I'll tell you why.
I've now lived 4 years under the Biden-Harris policies, and I have to say that those policies are not only becoming an existential threat to our country's way of life, but to our allies as well.
So when you,
and
Ambassador, this is, I'll let you finish, but this is so striking. You said it was a no for me after that, after January 6th.
I did.
And here we are right now.
I did.
And you're saying it's a yes for you.
It is a yes for me. It is an absolute yes for me. That is how badly the Biden-Harris team have prosecuted their job.
But the whole point you seem to be making was that January 6th and that kind of attack on democracy is bigger than any policy.
I am seeing so many attacks on democracy that eclipse January 6th.
He just could not get him to say what he wanted to him. Saying, I'm seeing so many attacks on democracy that eclipse whatever you want to claim about January 6th. If you missed the preceding hour, I'll tell you again, Obama is going to join Harris in Pennsylvania, trying to shore up her support in that state. Musk is going with Donald Trump to Pennsylvania. And you know where they're going? They're going back to Butler County, Pennsylvania. It was July 13 in Butler County, Pennsylvania, that Trump was nearly assassinated. He told a crowd last night, we're going to go back to Butler County, and we're going to finish the speech we started. This is going to be great. Coming up, speaking about the near assassination of Trump, a conspiratist or a theorist, how you want to clarify him, reference JFK and the Trump situation. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Question, do you know what vermiculite is? It is an insulation in the attics of hundreds of thousands of homes and public buildings. Looks like kitty litter, but often contains asbestos. Wellington Environmental is the largest company in the Midwest that can remove that hazard for you. Wellington has what is called the General, a powerful industrial vacuum that can suck vermiculite out of the attic. Hang on, there's something else you should know. Many of you might qualify for up to a $4,000 rebate. You should at least contact Wellington to see if you qualify. And here's something else. Wellington arrives at the time they give you, not sometime within 4 hours. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com. WellingtonSTL.com. Wellington Environmental. Your world cleaner, better, safer. Be well with Wellington. One of the greatest pleasures in life is giving. Giving something special to someone just because. Vincent's Jewelers can help you. And you should know that Vincent's has helped raise almost $2 million for local charities. Vincent's Jewelers, St. Louis's premier, full-service, locally owned jewelry store. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day for new items. VincentsJewelers.com. My only jeweler, VincentsJewelers.com. I want you to know that McGuire Moving and Storage is silver certified, which means McGuire has a quality reputation helping older adults move local or long distance. And something else to know, Josh McGuire, president of McGuire Moving and Storage, is the only certified moving consultant in Missouri. Now, I'll tell you, once you met Josh, you're going to know your move will be easy. And I fully endorse McGuire Moving and Storage. McGuireMoving.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Change, 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 change.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
My next author, joining me, I should say, is an author of the book, The JFK Assassination Chokeholds, that inescapably proved there was a conspiracy. And Oliver Stone has written about it as a reference to the book. Fascinating glimpse into the accumulating knowledge of this crime, talking about JFK, and why Presidents Trump and Biden both backed away from full disclosure of the JFK files. This book goes beyond all reasonable doubt to prove that Oswald, given a real trial, would have been acquitted. And joining us, the author of the book, James DiEugeno, one of the leading JFK assassination theorists. James, welcome aboard, sir.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So let's begin. First of all, you've watched the assassination attempt on Trump. I don't know if you're aware, but he just announced today that he is going back to Butler County, Pennsylvania, as he said, to finish the speech that got cut short July 13. He's going back October 5. Your thoughts on him doing that to begin with?
It's pretty interesting, isn't it? But let me add, I think that this might be part of the reason why he's now said that if elected, he will now declassify all the JFK documents, which he had delayed. There's nothing like it happening to you to convince you were wrong.
You're right.
Okay?
Yeah, you're right about that. You're right about that. Oh, and by the way, Elon Musk is going to be with him as well. And it's going to be outside again, a Butler County farm field, basically, for the Butler County Fair. Now, the other day, the Secret Service said, you got to move your event indoors because we can't protect you. And I'm thinking they're using that now as an excuse to throttle back the crowd around him so it doesn't look like he has that much momentum. I'd like your thought on that before we get into your book and its details.
Well, I have to, in their defense, I have to say they looked really bad that first time around.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean, and they got burned in Congress over those hearings, and that the chief had to resign.
Right.
Okay, she didn't want to resign.
No.
But she was being going at relentlessly, by even people and even Democrats in the Congress. Okay, even AOC went after her.
But do you think the Secret Service will use this as an excuse to throttle back his crowds so you can't see masses around?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's a matter of doing that or preserving the Secret Service themselves because they don't want to get burned again. Okay,
And they already did at Mar-a-Lago. Now to your book, the JFK assassination chokeholds. One of the things you're pointing out, and again, as Oliver Stone noted, that if he had ever gotten to trial, Oswald was not guilty. Give us a thumbnail sketch.
Yes, I really truly believe that would have been the case. Okay, and to just put in some of the things that that are in the book that point this out. Okay, number one, I'm sure you're aware of something called chain of custody in the law. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that has to be proven out. Okay. Or else the defense will make a big deal about it. Okay. Well, we talk about how the lack of chain of custody of two things, the CE-399, the so-called magic bullet, and whether or not it's really Kennedy's brain that those are pictures of, because there's a lot of evidence saying that is not really Kennedy's brain. All right. And in fact, one of the photographers, in fact, the only photographer to the JFK autopsy, when he was called to testify by the Assassinations Records Review Board, I believe in 1997 this was, and they showed him, these are the pictures that are supposed to be taken by you of Kennedy's brain. Okay. During the autopsy. And he goes, are they? And so this guy named John Stringer, and very few people know this, which I think is the reason it's so explosive. They don't want the public to know it. He walks up to the pictures. He examines them closely. And he says, this is Ansco. This is Ansco film. I didn't use Ansco. I used Kodak.
Okay. So even the film difference.
And then,
okay.
Right, and then that's number one. And then he goes, "You see these numbers at the right-hand bottom of this picture? This means it was a press pack. This means it was taken in series. That's why there's a number there. I didn't do that. I used duplex folders. I took them one by I didn't take a press pack. Okay, and so that repeats the question. Are you ready to say that you didn't take those pictures? And he says, if that's Ansco and this is a press pack, I didn't take these pictures. So the question then becomes, why did somebody else have to take the pictures? What were they possibly trying to conceal? And the answer to that question is this. At least I think it is, and I go into this in the book in about 12 pages. Okay. There's too much damage that everybody saw to Kennedy's brain to be a full-size brain, which is what those pictures show. And in addition to that, there's the problem of the volume and the weight. The average weight for a guy Kennedy's size, 6'1", 180, okay, would be about 1,340 grams, okay? The brain that was weighed after the autopsy was, get this, 1,500 grams. I ask you, with all the damage to Kennedy's skull that everybody saw in the Zapruder film, in the back of the car, with all the blood and tissue in that back seat, with Jackie Kennedy.
It would have diminished the brain.
Right, with Jackie Kennedy going out the back of the car to the trunk to retrieve part of his brain, and she actually gave it to one of the doctors? How can it be? How can it be more than the average?
Let me break this
That's
down.
impossible.
Let me take a moment to break this down for the audience again. You're listening to James DiEugenio, co-author of the JFK Assassination Chokeholds. He's written 4 books as a retired teacher, co-edited, I should say, on the assassination. And should be pointed out, he has an M.A. in history from California State University, Northridge. One of the things you also point out in the book, reference the Warren Commission, why was Oswald impersonated? Very quickly give me an answer to that, because I got 2 or 3 others I want to get to.
Okay. I believe he was impersonated to show him in incriminating circumstances prior to the assassination. These are things like attempting to buy a car at a dealer and telling the guy, I'm going to be coming into a lot of money soon. Okay. And then also at the door of a Cuban exile, Silvio in Dallas, with 2 other Cuban exiles. And then the guy calls back the next day and says, this Oswald guy's a little loco. He says we should have killed Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs. Those are the kind of things I think that were meant to be frame Oswald in advance.
Let me get into another one. Is why did Ruby, you're suggesting, get assistance in killing Oswald? We all saw Ruby do that, but the assistance and how he got there.
On Saturday night, the murder of Oswald takes place on Sunday, okay? And on Saturday night, Lee Harvey Oswald attempted to make a phone call, all right? And he had to write out who he wanted to talk to. And then that piece of paper was given by the secretary to the Secret Service, all right? The Secret Service vetoed this call. It was to a guy named John Hurt in North Carolina, who was a former military intelligence officer, all right? He was stationed a couple hundred miles away from Nag's Head, which was a naval base in which they trained defectors, okay, to go to communist bloc countries in the 60s and the late 50s. In my opinion, and the opinion of other people, including a CIA officer, when Oswald attempted to make that call, that essentially signed his death certificate, okay, that he was trying to get help as to what he should do now that he was in detention. And then Ruby comes in the next morning, okay, and goes ahead and polishes him off. And he did not come down the Main Street ramp as the Warren Commission says he did, okay? He came in the back way, and he had help getting in the back door. And that's how he got in undetected.
Yeah, Ruby was known to police officers. They knew him, and they were kind of maybe over cordial for some of them, or maybe involved in a conspiracy. You've laid out a lot. We don't have time to get into all of it. They're going to have to pick up the book by James DiEugenio and the JFK Assassination Chokeholds that inescapably prove there was a conspiracy. James, I thank you for your time, and I know we just glossed over it, but it's going to be fascinating reading for those still raising questions about JFK. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
You bet. We'll do it
Bye-bye.
again. Thank you, sir. Fascinating story. And again, I leave it to you and your decision making. He raises questions that are legitimate, and the same thing does appear. Reference: why did Obama, and then of course followed by Trump, and then Biden, not release all the JFK files? 96% plus, but that's not all of them. All right, coming up, the war Israel is battling with Iran and how it could threaten and spill over to the U.S. and the world. That's still to come. Please stand by it.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Question: are you looking to unlock the full potential of artificial intelligence for your business? I want you to meet my friends at PRI Global, named by the St. Louis Business Journal as a leading IT consulting firm. 25 years helping local and worldwide companies. PRI Global has a free survey to determine where your company stands in your AI journey. You simply go to priglobal.ai. priglobal.ai. And I also have a phone number, so get ready to copy that number. And I'll remind you that PRI Global has its own AI lab, creating, adapting, developing, pushing the boundaries for what AI can do for you. Here's the number: 636-689-0545. 636-689-0545. Or visit priglobal.ai. priglobal.ai. The Cafe Napoli family is adding another great place for you to enjoy. Where? Well, first, let me remind you, you have the original Cafe Napoli, downtown Clayton. Napoli 2, Town and Country. Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C. Plus, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. And opening soon, Napoli Kirkwood, right downtown Kirkwood Road. Napoli Kirkwood. Renewal by Andersen sponsoring this hour of Larry Connors USA. And let's be honest, most window companies are pushing cheap vinyl windows, adding bells and whistles to make them sound great, but renewal windows are twice as strong. You do not want to go cheap when you can go with quality and get the nation's best warranty. Check the website, rbastl.com, or dial pound 250, pound 250, and say Windows.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
They have three things they're doing. One is they're dismantling systematically their leadership, and we've seen the evidence of that clearly for the last 3 weeks. And here is the so-called successor, hasn't been announced yet, Hassim Sufeddin. As you said, he's a cousin in Nasrallah. He is a founder of Hezbollah. He goes all the way back to 1982. His son is married to Qasem Soleimani's daughter. He has been embedded in this for years and is very close to Iran and the supreme leader. They're going to keep doing this. They've taken out their senior leaders. They've taken down operational leaders like the rocket and missile commander, and they've killed a number of their tactical leaders, because the second mission they're going after in Lebanon is the rocket and missile force. We can only speculate, but about a week and a half ago, I was told by Israelis they had taken down about 30% of the rocket and missile force. I suspect they're probably close to 50% by now, and clearly that is really what they're after, because that's the weapon that can hurt them.
Yeah, that is, of course, General Jack King, retired Fox News analyst, talking about how Israel is moving into southern Lebanon, their ground war. going after Hezbollah, not the Lebanese, not the nation of Lebanon, but the terrorists hiding and operating inside their nation, often hiding under baby beds, cowards that they are, and in hospitals. Thereby, if you hit us, you're going to kill innocent people. And that is a fact. Sad, but a fact. And they will shoot from behind babies, using them as shields. They'll dress in skirts so maybe you think it's a woman until they pull out an RPG and try to kill IDF troops. IDF casualties have been extensive. We're probably not getting a full report, but a last report I saw, we got a dozen, maybe up to 20 killed in this ground war. But they're determined to put in a buffer zone between them and the Hezbollah rockets. A 10-mile buffer zone, which would give them more time to prepare for rockets being fired into northern Israel, and also be far enough away that maybe they couldn't even hit some of the villages in northern Israel. There are thousands that have been displaced in northern Israel because of those rockets. There are something like 1 million displaced in Lebanon, and they're told to go north, go to Beirut, but also that's been hit because that's where some of the Hezbollah leaders were hiding out. See, every time you say we want to protect civilians, and if you go here, you'll be safe, the cowardly terrorists go with them and hide in their midst. Once again, back to General Jack King and the ground war.
They're attacking on two axes. What they're trying to do is eliminate the threat at the border, the rocket and missile threat at the border, and the potential for an invasion like Hamas did on October the 7th. They've got paratroopers, commandos, and armor forces involved in that. They're working on two axes. They've committed a division to it. They've got two other divisions in standby, which will likely get committed. It'll take a number of weeks for them to accomplish this mission.
It will take a number of weeks, so it's going to drag out. And the longer it drags out, the more likely more Israelis are going to die in the ground war. We do not want U.S. boots on the ground. We want to support Israel with munitions, airstrikes, things of that nature, rocket strikes, drone strikes. But we don't want U.S. troops on the ground, nor even in the air. And we've got ships in the sea right now, the Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea. They're all ready to be used as needed, but they could become targets of Iran. Hezbollah can hit them, but Iran is using Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels and Hamas, I should say, as their proxies to carry out more terror against the U.S., Israel, Western empires in total, as they describe us, and anyone that is not a jihadist. That includes fellow Muslims. That's why they have no compunction about slaughtering their own people or putting them in harm's way, because they value a fellow Muslim's life as dust to be offered up to Allah. And the sad part of it is, the other day when Israel struck Lebanon and hit the master control headquarters and caught Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader, and several of his commanders in one spot, his wife and children were with him. They also were killed. That was not the intent to kill his wife and children. But he knew he was being hunted, and what kind of a man would drag his wife and children with him, knowing that he could be assassinated at any moment and they might be killed in the process? There's no man I know that would do that. They would kiss them goodbye and put them in a safe place and then go about their business and hope to hell they don't get killed. Back to the war in Israel right now as they're carrying it out. Jack King, retired military general, says, aside from Hezbollah, you got to look at the main head of the body, the snake, Iran.
So our audience understands. I believe, and so does the Israelis who I talk to, they certainly believe that Iran is vulnerable. And why is that? and they're somewhat back on their heels. Well, there are two major proxies where they make all their investment are being systematically dismantled. The military effectiveness of Hamas is dramatically reduced, and you can see what's happening in Hezbollah, and we just talked about it. That is a big deal. And what Netanyahu is going for here, he's not going for stop the fighting. He's going for the win. And that, I think, is what he should be pursuing.
Yeah, we got to go for the win, and that means eventually Iran at some point. And, of course, Iran fired something like 200 missiles into Israel the other day. Israel's not fully retaliated for that. And thank God we don't have casualties, mass casualties from those missiles fired into Israel. But Michael Rubin, speaking on behalf of the American Enterprise, says you got to keep in mind, while the damage was minimal this time, the next time, maybe not so.
Before we celebrate the fact that so many of these missiles were shot down or missed their target, remember, as in last April when Iran sent its previous barrage, if only 7 or 8 missiles get through, but those 7 or 8 have chemical, biological, or radiological warheads, then we're talking a whole different ballgame. I'm afraid now that this has happened twice, that the Israelis are going to be tempted to respond and respond hard. I think we're now in the last days of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
That would be good. The last stages of the Republic of Iran. Fred Fleitz joined me in the last hour. Fred Fleitz, 25 years with the CIA, House Intel, also serving National Security Council with President Trump. And he says, I cannot see Iran going after a head of state. In other words, the Ayatollah of Iran. They may continue to kill his generals, commanders around him, but not take out the head of state. Now, I'm going to have to go along with Fred's belief because he's certainly more attuned to the situation and has more knowledge than I do. But on the other hand, if you take out Ayatollah, there are a lot of Iranians who would be glad to see that happen. They're now living under strict Sharia law. Women are pulled out in public and beaten, flogged mercilessly to death in many cases because they weren't wearing their veil properly. And a lot of Iranians don't want that, and they want to have their children, especially their baby girls, have a chance to grow up and be a woman and be able to read and write, but that's not allowed under Sharia law. Only men should have that ability. So there are a lot of Iranians who'd like to see the Ayatollah gone forever. Recently, Donald Trump was in a store, and he stepped up to pay for a woman's groceries. Was that a photo op? Sure it was a photo op. He knows he's being followed. But he's done similar things without ever looking for credit. In fact, words coming out sometimes of things he did that no one knew about except the people directly involved. He didn't do it for the cameras all the time. But for Kamala's support animal, Tim Walz, what Trump did the other day, it was just for the cameras. That story as we continue.
We're talking about these prices and we're doing things. I saw a photo op of Donald Trump a few weeks ago, and he was in a grocery store. And he pulled out money to pay for a woman's grocery store. Look how generous he was on this. I would bet you any amount of money that's the first time he's been in a grocery store since 1985. I guarantee you that. He never went into that grocery store. He doesn't actually know what the cost of those things are. But as the rest of the world saw, because of his botched handling of COVID and a global recession, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had to work ourselves out of that hole.
Good God. He found a way to put COVID and the botched recession back on the doorsteps of Trump. These guys are never going to take responsibility. As far as him saying Trump has never been in a grocery store maybe since 85, I don't know. That may be true. I could say the same about Biden and Harris and maybe even Walz. But that's not the issue. Was it just for a photo op? Could be. I'm not going to deny that. Now, the other day, if you recall, some diners got tossed out of a restaurant, and they were dining at this Pennsylvania very famous restaurant in Pittsburgh, Prima Nati or something of that nature. And the staff started coming around on this Saturday and told them, you got to leave. It's last call. around 3:30. The bartender said, last call. One of the patrons said, I was there when that happened, and he's talking to Fox News, so you can say, well, he just made up the story. But others said the same thing. They were told they had to leave the restaurant. So everybody had to leave the restaurant. And then a bus pulls up with a bunch of people that go inside and take seats. And then in comes Kamala Harris for a photo op to be seen shaking hands with diners. They're all smiling and clapping. A very friendly crowd compared to what she might have had if she had just walked into that restaurant. By the way, J.D. Vance did go back to that same restaurant and say, hey, first of all, folks, don't accuse and go after the restaurant. They're good people. They're hard workers. Misunderstanding. But I will pay for all the meals that the people had ordered, and yet you told them they had to go. And when they realized they're going to be replaced by prop actors, that they were in a diner, he said, I will pay all their bills. But did the story happen the way I just described it? What I was describing is primarily as Fox reported after talking to some of the diners, and that's what the diners were saying. Did they all lie? All of them, really? Did not one of them say that's a lie? They didn't tell us to leave? Is it a lie that the restaurant then was filled up with people brought in on a bus? Snopes is one of those sites you go to check facts, but they've become more leftist than actual fact. So they start off saying about this rumor circulating online that diners were kicked out of this place in Moon Township just outside Pittsburgh to have a stage photo op with paid actors. Said the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette before the motorcade arrival described the upcoming stop as a private party. In other words, they were going to have a private party there for her. That's why they had to move everybody out. So they were not kicked out just for a photo op. It was already scheduled. Well, why would you post that for patrons coming in? Today we're closing at 4 and give them advance notice. Secret Service spokesman told Snopes by phone that the white vans were part of the Secret Service motorcade, transporting members of the campaign staff and press. He said, I can confirm it was a volunteer appreciation event. So in the end, it was props being brought in for Kamala. So you can look for everything in here to say, well, it wasn't really set up to kick them out just for that. So it was a private event. I understand that. My favorite Cafe Napoli's often will have a private event, and they post on the door. Private event until 4 or starting at 4, whatever the process is. So if I'm in there and they want to tell Larry Connors to leave, I'm going to leave because they're having a private event. I'm not part of it. Don't know why. But you leave, right? But if they did exactly the way this went down, again, they're claiming, look, the motorcade that was brought in, they were simply bringing in campaign staff and press. This was meant to be basically a thank you group for everybody supporting Harris. She's entitled to have that. But then they kicked those who were there out without advance warning. And yeah, she comes in and there's plenty of photo op for her. So you have photo op with Trump maybe giving money to a woman to buy groceries. You have a photo op of Kamala Harris walking into a staged event where everybody in there loves her. No one's going to turn their back on her. One deputy campaign manager for Harris showed a picture of Harris greeting people at tables, but all the televisions were turned off. ABC News footage showing some of the people seated at the table appeared to be dressed to meet. They didn't just walk in to have coffee like most people would. Loafers, cutoffs, shirt, teeless. Nope, they were all dressed. They were not just in casual attire. Yeah, I still say it was a setup. What do you think? Bottom line is, I think it was a photo op. And they could have just simply said that. But they lied to make you think these are common people greeting Harris. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.